welcome to QI, where tonight we'll be sorting out the knights from the knaves. Strapping on the breastplate of interestingness, we have a goodly knight, Sue Perkins. A knight to remember, Victoria Coren. A very classic, gentle knicht, the Reverend Richard Coles. And the long, dark night of the soul, Alan Davies. And knightly noises all come from knaves. Sue goes. Lovely then, Victoria goes. Richard goes. And Alan goes.
Fruity, fruity, fruity.
Yes. So,
fruity,
yes. You have been warned. Let's head straight to the lists. Why was the Black Prince so called? Reverend.
Well, if my Ladybird Book of Princes is to be trusted, it's because he had black armour.
So one occasion where the inestimable Ladybird series has let you down. There is
Is it like Reservoir Dogs, where basically they weren't allowed to use their first names and they got to sign it? So you're the Black Knight, you're the White Knight, you're the Orange Knight, you're the Pink Knight. Why do I have to be the Pink Knight?
I don't want to be. It might as well be. Yes.
Was he black?
No. Oddly enough, his mother was perhaps of Moorish descent.
Oh.
Philippa of Hainault, which is a tube line, isn't it?
Hainault is very near where I grew up.
Oh, there you are.
Hainault.
Hainault. Do you like Hainault?
Hainault. Steady.
Is Hainault good? What happened?
I don't know.
Did something happen there?
I'll find, at the end of every tube line, you do get a good
It falls to me to rescue this stuff.
Yes, I think you should. Yes.
Did you know that the oldest British door comes from Hainault?
No.
Well, it's in Westminster Abbey. It's a door which connects a cloister to the Abbey, and the canons of Westminster live behind it. And they dated their door, and they found that the wood it was made from was growing in Hainault in the 10th century.
Wow. Are you proud?
I am very proud of the door.
The sign painter's getting busy right now, going home of the oldest door.
It's a reason to get off at Hainault, finally.
Yeah.
It's the wood that grew there 1,000 years ago.
Yeah. Well, Philippa of Hainault was perhaps of Moorish descent, so that may be the reason he was called the Black Prince. We just don't know.
I'm wondering, do you think the Black Prince might have been called the Black Prince because his sins were as black as pitch?
Yes. I mean, although he was known as the master of chivalry, he almost destroyed the entire population of Limoges and Caen.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like he's capable of
No,
it.
he doesn't.
I know a fact about the Black Prince. Well, I don't know if it's definitely a fact, but this is something my husband told me.
David Mitchell told you something and you believe it.
You know those sort of early dates when you're just talking about, you know, whether you were happy at school and heraldry?
Oh, I thought you meant 30 years.
Is this true that, wait now, he stole something off a corpse? I remember the romance of the moment.
You're
not the
thinking
exact fact.
of Ichteen.
Yes, Ichteen, which the Prince of
King
Wales
Prince of
wears
Bohemia,
now,
yeah.
that was stolen by the Black Prince off a corpse on a battlefield.
Yeah, that's right. And it was the feathers as well, the 3 feathers that are the symbol of the Prince of Wales. And it was the King of Bohemia. And he had a very serious disability, but he still rode into battle. He was blind.
OK.
That would explain his appalling makeup.
That was the King of Bohemia, who went into battle against him. And he defeated him and took his colours, which were the 3 Prince of Wales feathers, and the motto, I serve, Ichteen.
Do you know, stealing from dead people was quite a big... Do you know St Hugh of Lincoln, the great St Hugh of Lincoln?
I think we're all pretty much, up to speed on St Hugh of Lincoln.
He was one of the great saints in the Middle Ages, but he was staying with some monk friends in France.
Yeah.
And they had the relic, the preserved arm of Mary Magdalene. And St Hugh...
I thought I'd got that.
Well,
25 quid I paid for that.
Yeah.
And?
But, well, he bent down to venerate it, and while he was down there, he bit off her finger. It's true, he took it back.
When you say it's true, I happen to know you've written a book on rather obscure saints.
I have, yes.
And are you suggesting that everything about all of them is true?
I'm suggesting that very little about them is true. The biting off the finger of Mary Magdalene is true. His friendship with a swan is doubtful, but the biting off the finger is...
When you say friendship with a swan, are you being euphemistic about...
No, his best friend was a swan. And it's depicted in one of his sort of symbolism in his portraits is that he walks around with a swan. But if you look at Lincoln Cathedral, it has a vault which is all wonky, which he built, which is said to suggest the flight of a swan's wing.
Yeah. That's great if builders do something wrong. They can just say, I'm trying to evoke a swan's wing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, that is a symbol of me being crap at building. But,
He really did bite off the finger. There was a huge trade in bitten-off relics.
right.
You know, you weren't on the ecclesiastical map until you had a good dead bit of someone. So he was notorious for stuffing his mouth with bitten-off members of one kind.
But that, of course, was, as I say, the leader of chivalry, and chivalry was all about jousting. So can you tell me anything about jousting? What the rules were of jousting, in the lists, as they were called?
You had to... Now, there's the big, massive cotton bud, and you have to hit a shield, is it? You have
Cotton bud,
you
yes.
you get a point if you hit a shield or their breastplate.
Absolutely right. I mean, the rules varied, but one set of rules we have is that you win the joust if you get 3 points.
That's how we did it in Croydon. That's,
You get 3 points, and you get a point for knocking someone straight on the breastplate so that it shatters the lance.
Oh.
A glancing blow doesn't count.
But in the dinner show at the Excalibur Casino in Las Vegas, the winner is the last one to jump off their horse.
Do they really have that?
Yes, it's a brilliant show because they've got King Arthur and he fights against his long-lost son, Prince Christopher. I think the people that put the show
not
together
right.
don't know that there's other people in the story apart from King Arthur. They thought, well, we can't have a story. There only seems to be one person in the story, so we'll just invent Prince Christopher.
Christopher?
Yeah, and he wins because he gets off his horse last, and then you all have a big piece of chicken.
But there's no Game of Thrones with those noises and heads coming off and blood spurting out.
Well, no, heads coming up. I mean, they're real people, so...
Oh, right. You can do that. There are ways of doing it.
do you have to dress as a wench?
You say have to.
Oh, yeah, I've got the gear, I'm just waiting.
Yeah, they give you some plaits to put on. Some
It's a bit Bavarian.
This is the Excalibur English-themed casino, where
Right.
it's sort of Harry Potter, Robin Hood, King
That is
Arthur
their
and
idea
the
of
Queen
us.
are all roughly the same vintage. You can buy memorabilia of all of the same shop.
sitting down for dinner at this event?
Oh, 200?
Oh,
It's
yeah,
much
they're
like
huge.
this room, actually.
Yeah,
If
this audience.
Richard and I now gallop towards each other on horseback with lances, as I very much hope we will later, that's exactly what it would be like. It's just the people who have buckets of chicken.
Don't you get a bit... I mean, getting a horse into a casino is a fairly elaborate thing, isn't it?
It's not famous. They have white tigers. They have Siegfried and Roy with their white tigers.
They do. I mean, they don't really have Siegfried and Roy anymore.
No, they got...
They did, didn't they? There was a terrible mauling.
Yes.
And actually, I really respected Siegfried and Roy a lot more after that, because for years people thought they were all cheesy and mainstream, and then one of them had his head bitten off by a tiger.
It showed that every night they were actually taking a risk.
They really were.
The vicar of Stiffgate,
Yeah.
he was bitten by a
He
lion.
was.
Yes.
Roger something or other.
Harold Davidson, I
Harold.
think it was, yeah.
You're right.
He was in the 30s, I think. He was the vicar of Stiffgate, but he used to try and reform prostitutes in a very, what we'd say, a hands-on ministry kind of...
That's what a prostitute needs, really. Just a bit more prostituting. With a goodly hand.
He was tireless in his dedication to his flock, and rather much of the soup. And he ended up, I'm not kidding, he ended up as a lion tamer. I think it was Skegness. It went horribly wrong, and he was bitten by his lion.
Yep.
And that was the end of the vicar of
He was
Stiffgate.
Are you sure you're not accidentally recounting the plot of a limerick?
Anyway, so there we are. Now, what is the first rule of nightclub?
Oh, the first rule of nightclub. Well, you don't talk about nightclub.
Somebody had to.
Well done.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Fell on my sword.
Yeah.
Seems appropriate.
It was exactly.
Is it an existing club or a club
No,
from
it's
the
a very,
olden
very,
times?
it's a very oldie times club of knights, the most famous group of knights. Of
Templar.
The Knights Templar. There are still people who think they still exist in, you know, the sort of Dan Brownie kind of way. But they actually folded up in 1314. But they were very powerful. It was after the First Crusade they were formed in Jerusalem. And they were allowed to do almost anything. The law didn't apply to them in Jerusalem, which annoyed a lot of other people, but there were certain things they weren't allowed to do.
They weren't allowed to breed ferrets.
To breed ferrets. Do you know anything else you know about them? Well, you know they look
Chew
like that.
gum.
I know about ley lines.
Go on, then.
They made them.
They made... So you've been reading these stupid books about knights. Apparently, they are responsible for laying ley lines.
Well,
No.
they know where they are anyway.
Yes, they do. They've got them all hidden.
No sex?
Well, yeah, they were allowed to marry, but if they married, they weren't allowed to wear the white and red uniform. There was no hunting except lions. Quite specific.
That would actually be a brilliant rule for now, wouldn't it? There's so much debate about whether you should hunt or not. Please, everyone, OK, hunting is allowed, but only lions.
That's very true. They're only one squire each, no telling tales, no lockable purses.
Oh.
Yeah. I suppose they have to show their trust or something like that. But their last and most important rule was no kissing. Oh. Yeah. Lastly, we held it dangerous to all religion to gaze too much on the countenance of women. And therefore, no brother shall presume to kiss neither widow, nor virgin, nor mother, nor sister, nor aunt, nor any other woman.
But anal's all right.
It's very funny you should say that. Because one of the reasons they were closed down is there was a charge against
Too much
them.
buggery.
Yeah.
There is a charge against them. De osculabanto se in ore, in umbilico, seu ventre nudo, et in ano, seu in spina dorsi. Et in ano,
Et in
ano.
And the end.
Yeah.
And
And
in
the
anal.
accusation was they kissed one another on the mouth, on the navel, the bare belly, the anus, or the backbone.
Well, they were thorough. Ley line, you don't want to leave any stone unturned. There might be one coming out of his arse. I'll have a look.
But that is...
Right, that's enough. That's enough, Templars.
Did you know that the Temple Church in London, which was founded by the Knights Templar, and there are still some Knights Templar lying around, there's a unique
ones.
title for,
Yeah.
if you're the priest in charge there, you're the Reverend and Valiant Master of the Temple.
Oh, that's...
It sounds like something from a
The
Star
Reverend
Wars
and
movie.
Valiant.
The Reverend and Valiant Master of the
Yeah.
Temple.
In that picture, is he going, show me on the cross where he kissed you?
But my arms are much too long. I'm not going to fit on this.
Yes, you're going to nail me against the air.
You have to just nail my ears to it.
There you go. Kissing, of course, has long been a controversial thing. And in the 20th century, there were anti-kissing leagues. And what do you think they objected to? There you are.
Transmission of disease?
Yes, you're right. It was a hygiene issue.
I read a thing also that when trains first began, women travelling on their own in compartments were supposed to put pins in their mouths, lest when they went through a tunnel someone tried to kiss them.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Just nail gun their mouth shut.
No,
Mouth full of pins.
with the pin facing outwards, so someone just went, I have to. Into a rude surprise. Yeah, I do that in tunnels, just in case.
I consider myself warned.
Yeah.
I keep a pin in my anus.
Oh, dear.
In case there are any Knights Templar.
Templar just around the place. Oh, you bad person. OK, moving on. What makes you think this knight is a total bastard?
Oh, he looks like a mean hat.
Oh,
Not his hat, Richard.
he's got a diagonal white stripe across his lions, which means he's been naughty.
No, he hasn't been naughty at all.
Is he, is he legitimate? Has his father
His
been naughty?
father's been naughty. It's what's known
I
as
see.
the bend sinister.
Oh, we've all had Ben Simpson.
It starts at the bottom left and goes up to the top right, which can indicate you are a bastard. And in his case, there's more information just on that simple coat of arms. The three lions. No,
He's-
the bastard son of
is it
Wayne Rooney.
Yeah.
Somebody told me at the end of the day.
It's the red significance.
It's the royal family. It's a royal coat of arms.
So he's a royal bastard. So he's
Yeah.
a Fitzjohn or something.
Fitzroy.
Fitzroy.
Fitzroy. His name would be Fitzroy. Fitz is the son of and Roy is king. And the one particular king had 5 Fitzroys from his mistress. Who would that be?
Hang
Who
on,
was the lady?
one of the Georges?
No, go back a bit. Rewind.
Henry
Charles
VIII.
II.
Charles II.
Henry
yeah.
VII.
No, Charles II.
Charles
We got
II.
there. We got there without you. Charles II.
That's some kings.
Very good. She was called Barbara Palmer, and she bore him 5.
Babs.
5 Babs Palmer. She would have been a bad lady.
Queen
I expect,
Babs.
Yeah.
You fixed me up again.
Fixed me up. And we have a Henry.
Because if it hands out, if the one with the stripe then marries and has a legitimate son,
Ah.
then they take the stripe away.
That would be very good. No, I think you keep it, I think, in your coat of arms. But in fact, there are certain things which indicate something very extraordinary about your shield. What do you think they are?
OK.
They have a particular meaning. Yeah.
Is it visible panty line?
It's terrible. It really, they get terrible BPL.
It's not visible, Ben. It's the colours, actually, are indicative of
Status?
sin, of a mistake, an error. They're known as abatements, also as stains, as in a stain on the family name, or a stain on the escutcheon.
So, what can stain
Got to be
be?
very serious. It's going on your coat of
I
arms.
know. Well, the first is called the Point Champagne Tenay, and it's for killing a prisoner who has demanded quarter or mercy, which is really ungentlemanly.
Yeah.
Then how would anybody know that you'd done that?
Well, I suppose you have to have a witness. It's a
Well,
very
they
good
would
point.
have to
That's
have
true of any
something on their
crime.
own shield, wouldn't they? Witnessing someone killing someone who's asked for quarter, you've got to have
That's
something
true,
on the shield.
and not intervening.
And not intervening.
Yeah, you're right.
And but how would you know that they'd done that? Unless somebody
Taking a
someone asked for
script.
quarter and not intervened, and they definitely need something on the shield.
Yeah, well, they'd get whistleblower. They'd have a massive whistle. They'd say, you grass me up. And then your shield would just be full of stuff.
Shield within a shield within
Yeah.
a...
Well, you don't clean the toilet properly. Well, you've got a toilet brush. You don't do it. You get one of those. I mean,
That's
it's
right.
anything.
It's a bit like points on a driving licence, isn't
It
it?
is. Absolutely
Different
right.
points on the shield. For...
Yeah, exactly. And the next one here, which we'll have a look at.
Needs dusting.
This is called the Delft Tenay, and that's for issuing a challenge and then bottling out.
Coward.
Yeah.
It's a big old
Cow-
yellow smudge on
Exactly. Very much a smudge on the coat of arms. And then we have a gusset sanguine sinister.
that. Gusset sanguine.
Yeah.
On a night, really?
Yeah. Absurd, isn't it? There's no reason for you to
sanguine.
get.
So
Well, the
a
sanguine is the
bloody-
colour, it's blood colour.
OK.
It's for being drunk. And you have a gusset sanguine dexter,
Which on the right.
Is
That's,
being...
being an
Yeah.
adulterer. So there you are. Now we have one that you have to guess. So tell me what this is.
you're a drunken adulterer.
There you are, you see? Points for listening. Yeah. So that's a whole world of heraldry.
It's sort of a nicer design for the drunken
It
adulterer.
is, isn't it?
I feel like it's too rewarding.
Is it two gussets or a wine glass?
Well, that's the choice facing
Yes,
the drunken adulterer.
exactly.
I mean, every Saturday.
Yeah, they knew what they were doing.
Did you know that if you're a clergyman, you can't have a helmet on your coat of arms?
Oh, thank God.
You can't have a helmet because you can't be a chaplain or
you
something.
can't do anything which is... Did you know that if you're a clergyman, if you go to a black tie do, you can't have a stripe down your trousers?
No.
Because it's a military insignia, and you can't have that. And you can't have a helmet because it's a martial sign. So you have to have this sort of... It's a lovely sort of... remember Bill and Ben? It's a hat like that. It's called a galero. And it's black if you're a priest and red if you're a cardinal. And if you're the Pope, you get a pointy one with 3 tiaras.
Quite a
want to be
better
Pope.
I think you'd look good in that.
You've got to have it. That is-
Besides this.
There are people you apply to, and they decide. Isn't it the College of Arms?
Yeah.
And you have to pay.
Yeah, but how do you become one of the people who decide? How do you become a herald?
If you go to Garter Day at Windsor Castle, they turn out for that. And
I need to see photos of Garter Day.
it's very exciting because it's a big do, and if they install new Knights of the Garter Day,
Yeah.
you're in there for hours, then you hear sort of tramping from miles away, then all of a sudden the Beefeaters come in, all done up. And then you get the College of Heralds
It's like a
coming
gay
in,
tsunami.
and they carry things, have special big T-shirts.
Saying war, what is it good for?
That's our knights with their shields. You also find knights on a chessboard, of course. So what I want to know is this very strange conundrum. What's the maximum number of knights you can have on a chessboard, such that none of them can take another one?
Oh, multiples of 8, but...
I'll give you can try it out.
So that none...
Maximum number. What you have to do is understand what a knight's move is.
Stephen, I don't understand the question.
It's the maximum, it's the maximum number of knights you would have on a chessboard, such that none
Okay.
can take the other. Have you noticed something in common with the ones you're putting down?
They're all the same.
Same... OK, the same colour, so...
Yes, because a knight move must take a different colour.
So 32.
32 is the right answer! It's really very simple when you think about it, isn't it? It's one of those things that sounds incredibly complicated that you have to work out for ages, but there you are.
I still don't understand it at
Well,
all.
none of these knights can take another knight.
Isn't that rather more knights than we're used to?
Yes. it's a problem. It's not a real chess situation. It's if you
Because they
had-
move, because of the way they move, which is diagonal
Yeah.
and up one, they move to the alternate colour.
Yes.
So if you've got all the knights on the same colour, they cannot take...
Exactly right.
Oh,
That's
I
how...
get it.
In the centre of the board, you're controlling 8 different squares there, but they're all a different colour. The knight's on a black square. So all you have to do is put them all on a black square or all on a white
When you
square.
move your knight, do you make a little horsey noise?
That's so sweet.
And when you move your rook... Ah!
Bishop.
When you do your... Hello. That's your bishop. You're in such trouble. You're getting in trouble from both sides.
Oh, you are awful.
Yes. You're getting in trouble from both sides,
I'd
there,
say,
Richard.
if the Bishop of Peterborough is watching this evening, you'll have my resignation on your desk.
You confirmed me, not the present one.
Oh, which one?
I don't... God knows.
Was it Bishop Fever, the rudest bishop in the Church of England?
Could have been. He just gave me a piece of the host and moved on to the
off you
next
went.
line.
Yeah.
He gave you a piece of the host.
Yes.
What the hell kind of party was it?
That's what we call the bread and wine, as well you know. You secret religious, you.
Yeah.
I don't know why I put it to the host.
It might have been Bishop Westwood. The Bishop, who interestingly is the father of Tim Westwood, the hip-hop DJ.
Good
Does he
gracious.
speak like him?
Does he have a particular way of speaking?
Tim Westwood talks like a hip-hop star from the West Coast.
Yeah.
Oh, does he? American, false American
Very
accent.
effective.
Ali G is sort of based on
Yeah.
Tim
Oh,
Westwood.
really?
Yeah.
But his father was the Bishop of Peterborough, who was famous for knitting.
Knitting.
Knitting, he used to knit famously.
The knitting bishop.
There were items
was
on
that way
lookings
into
about his
knitting.
knitting. Isn't there a version of chess for kind of chess heads called fairy chess, where the pieces do more things?
Oh, what a
fairy
wonderful-
chess. I'm not making this up. I'm sure this is
Fairy
true.
chess.
That there's a version of chess where you can call these fairy pieces, and they can do extra things.
How many drugs did you take when you were hanging out with chess? So you could just go, you're playing chess, and suddenly you go, no, we're playing fairy chess now.
Well, you don't have to touch the pieces.
The whole point of chess is its limitations.
Yes,
It's all
precisely.
about the strictness. Of
Precisely.
You know,
it.
but hang on, Mrs. Poker player Victoria Coren Mitchell. Aren't there versions of poker where they kind of introduce wild cards and
Yes.
stuff to kind of get it? It's the same sort of thing.
In poker's different. As Martin Amis once said, in chess, the properties of a bishop are fixed. In poker, it's all wobbled through the prism of personality.
Well, you
Very
haven't obviously
good.
checked-
Beautiful quote.
Beautifully
Beautiful quote.
put.
But he said
Although
the joy of...
even chess players will say the best chess move to play is not the best chess move. It's the move your opponent would least like you to play. So in that sense, it's very like poker. Anybody who played Kasparov, for example, will say that the moment he sat down at the table, you felt beaten. He was so virile, so big, he had like a, 5 o'clock shadow at 10 in the morning, and he hunched over
What
the board.
nobody ever tried with Kasparov was just grabbing the queen and shouting, I'm playing fairy chess.
Exactly right. You can put your boards away now, children. There you go, 32, brilliantly deduced by so brilliant Perkins.
Kasparov wouldn't have liked it if he'd gone every time. He'd liked it even less if he did it when he moved his.
That would have been a brilliant strategy. Brilliant.
Every time he moved his
I wonder if it was...
Put him back in the stable.
If it was fairy chess, it could go, nay! Victoria, what was that line, that Martin English line again?
That was beautiful.
In chess, the properties and powers of a bishop are fixed. In poker, it's wobbled through the prism of personality. But do you know when he said that, Stephen? It was after a poker game that you and I and he
Yes,
all
I remember
played
in Wales,
many
with the
years
then
ago.
unknown Ricky Gervais.
Ricky Gervais, who was
Made
knocked
Robert.
out, got up, said, what am I supposed to do now? And you said, there's a shotgun in the drawer.
Very good title for a book.
So, now, name a place where a knight can be buried.
The ground.
You must be astonished to know that isn't true.
They have to be buried above the ground.
No, I'm saying that they can be buried, but where can they be buried?
In a tomb.
A vault?
A hole.
A pyramid?
The pyramid. The fact is the moment you are dead, you are no longer a knight.
You're not a knight
Oh,
anymore.
of course. Yeah, because everyone was shouting about how
About Jimmy
Jimmy Savile should have his
Savile,
knighthood
exactly.
taken away, but they'd have had to give it back to him in
Exactly.
order to take it
You're
away.
no longer a member of the order the moment you die. So the moment you die, you're not a knight. So you can't bury a knight anywhere. Unless you're very mean and bury them alive, I suppose.
Do you know who has the record for turning down the most knighthoods?
No.
It's L.S. Lowry. He turned down more honours than anybody else.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Mr. Pinman, Mr. Stickdrawer.
Yeah.
Matchstick man.
Matchstick,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Alan Bennett certainly turned one down. And who else do we know?
The art, isn't it, is turning
not-
one down so everybody knows.
So everybody knows without you being the one who tells them, which I refuse
I'd
to do.
turn one down.
Yeah.
We all, that's a very
I haven't
poetic.
quite grasped this, Alan.
So Aylward Davies. Oh,
Listen, I'll tell you all that. If you're a clergyman and
Yes.
you're knighted, you can't call yourself sir.
whoa.
Unless you are knighted before you're ordained, and then you can be the Reverend Sir or Lady. This
What
thing about you
whiz.
can't be, because it's a
Yeah.
chivalric order, you can't be...
It's military in the end.
Exactly,
You're a
so you
knight.
can't do that if you're a vicar.
Well,
you can't bear arms.
You can bear
Just a
legs,
can of
though, can't you?
mace.
Yeah. So, there are no dead knights, only dead former knights. Which knight's luggage included cannabis, bladders, shark intestines, strychnine, chili pepper, cocaine, heroin, and Kendal mint cake? Yes, Sue Perkins.
I'd say to get him through Eurovision, Terry Wogan.
We thought of all the heroic endurance struggles, yes.
Was it Sir Edmund Hillary?
It wasn't Sir Edmund Hillary, although Sir Edmund Hillary did take Kendal mint cake right up the Everest.
I didn't know that was a serving suggestion. I'm going to go home and try it now, though.
It was one of the many things that made Kendal mint cake famous in its day when it was famous, perhaps. Some people view
Is
it.
it Ranulph Fiennes?
You're in exactly the right area.
Shackleton?
Shackleton. Sir Ernest Shackleton is the answer. The Antarctic explorer. It's him in the darker polar neck.
Really fun job, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Oh, the endurance, I mean, was astonishing.
They
but
all look
One of
like
the
Captain Birdseye.
they don't look happy.
Right, actually can't open his eyes anymore.
Oh, it's...
Isn't it true that you used to take strychnine as a tonic?
Yes, that's right.
I've been to Shackleton's hut. I don't remember what was there.
Well, this was his first aid kit. It had isinglass, which is from the swim bladders of sturgeons, for use as a wound dressing. Tonics of iron and strychnine, completely correct, Richard, and iron and arsenic, which the wrong doses of either could cause a horrible lingering death, so you had to get that right. A colic treatment based on cannabis and chili pepper. Ginger carminative, an anti-flatulence preparation. Cocaine solution, which was, in fact, as eye drops for what problem?
Well, tired eyes, it would certainly put them on.
So we crack them up. It's actually snow blindness. Oh. Use chalk and opium against our eyes, like kaolin and morphine.
Yeah.
And Kendal mint cake. Have you ever had Kendal mint cake?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
lovely.
I find it quite plain. I would have taken a crunchy.
Nice to see that picture, because it explains what that man gave me at Schiphol Airport.
It's a simple mint cake.
If you go to Shackleton's hut, you're followed all the way there by a New Zealand official, and if you eat anything at all, like a packet of crisps, he walks looking around you to make sure you haven't dropped any crumbs.
I should absolutely. And is it worth a visit? Where is Shackleton's hut? Is it? It's not.
It's on Antarctica. It's
It's actually down in. You've been
Yes,
there?
it's-
Where did you go there? How exciting!
10 or 15 years ago, but it was Very exciting opportunity to see somewhere I would never normally go.
And was this from New Zealand?
Yeah, from New Zealand. You go up from Christchurch.
I went to an exhibition about Scott in Christchurch.
Yeah.
And they talk about what Amundsen took, and a completely different plan.
Yes.
Where Scott's plan was to go with ponies and horses and things. Amundsen was from Norway, and they just went with dogs. 55 dogs, I think they had.
Yeah.
I mean, they were really much better at it.
Dogs can go very far. Have you ever been dogs?
I have been. I have
Isn't it
in
amazing?
Wyoming. It was one of the most thrilling things I've ever done.
Well, do you know, a friend of mine did that, and she said that the thing is that the dogs can't stop when nature calls, and that you get pelted.
Yeah, you do.
Pelted with droppings.
Icy snow.
You go along and you come back and
Icy
you're
poo.
being pebble dashed by huskies.
It's basically husky cack, liquid husky cack,
Come here.
flying.
What Amundsen's dogs didn't know was that they would be eaten
Eaten.
by the men and by the other dogs.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, it was very carefully worked out, very precisely.
You can't carry all that dog food. You can't feed all those
No.
dogs all the way there and all the way back. So
This is the programme that Paul O'Grady must never make. For the death of dogs.
I say, tell you.
I think it was a bit unkind of Amundsen to put nul point under the flag.
Now, it's Knaves. What's the best way to stop your car from being stolen?
never park it, just drive it around and around.
Yeah. What you've cunningly done is avoid the obvious trap of saying you have a car alarm, because it seems that car alarms are worse than useless. In fact, we know that instinctively, don't we?
Because you ignore them.
You ignore them,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, not only that, 1% of people when asked said that they would actually call the police if they had a car alarm, and 60% said that they would call up to complain about it. You'd actually make a phone call, but not to say that someone's car was being stolen, but just to say what a bloody nuisance it was.
So if that's the worst thing to do, then what's the best thing to do?
Well, put in an old-fashioned lock.
Or have a rubbish car.
Or
I've
have
got
a terrible car.
I've got a terrible car
Yeah.
with loads of graffiti on it.
Yeah.
Someone drew a penis on the front bonnet.
A friend of mine who's married to a vicar, she came out one morning and found someone who'd written monk whore on the
Extraordinary.
monk whore.
And now on BBC One, Monk Hall. Robson Green.
Is monk hall. Did you know that actually car thieving is almost never a female occupation?
That's like a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tonight, the pair of us.
Yes, I'm sure you know who that is, but...
That's Bonnie.
Bonnie, as in Bonnie and Clyde, yes. But apparently the confraternity of car thieves don't think women should be allowed. So if a woman steals a car, they can't sell it on. They go, no, I'm not having that. I'm not having it off you, you don't know what it's about.
So what you're saying is there's very little divide between car thieves and car salesmen. Similar
It's a
view.
sexist bastion.
I saw this brilliant documentary about crime, and they interviewed these two young car criminals who were in jail, and they talked about what pride they took in their work, and one of them turned to the camera and said, some car criminals unfortunately give the rest of us a bad name.
Fantastic. Bit of pride in his work. Now, explain the effect of Stockholm Syndrome.
Oh, wasn't that when you identify... Because you identify, if you're a victim of kidnap, you identify with your kidnappers and you sort of become weird friends.
Yeah, I mean, that is what they say.
It's from the Patty Hearst kidnapping, is
Yeah.
that where it started?
Well, it was no, because she was nothing to do with Stockholm. There was a 73 kidnapping in Stockholm, after which it was named. That's the Stockholm Four. And they defended the robbers after the event and so on. So
Because they become so inured to the
that's
system
right.
of- yeah.
And the most famous one, as you rightly say, was the heiress of William Randolph Hearst, Patty Hearst, who was kidnapped by a strange group called the Symbionese Liberation Army.
Unusually for a clergyman of the Church of England, I've had dinner with Patty Hearst.
You have?
Have you?
How was she? Was she back to
Charming.
normal?
Completely charming. I didn't know who she was until someone said who she was.
By the time they had coffee, she wanted to be a vicar.
She'd sort of become a kind of bohemian socialite in Los Angeles in the 1980s when I used to go there in a previous incarnation. And I met her
When you
one-
were a rock star, a rock god.
You.
Yeah.
And I met her there. Those sort of dinners that you would go to where everyone would be weirdly famous and have no other reason to
Yeah.
be there at all. So you'd have Patty Hearst and, I don't know,
Nancy
Andy
Reagan.
Warhol and Eddie the Eagle, you know.
Oh, that's a dinner you'd want to go to.
No, definitely, definitely. But the fact is, it seems to be an aberration. It's very rare. Most people, when they're kidnapped, have nothing but feelings of complete hostility towards their captors, as you would expect.
I would feel as a clergyman sort of bound to sort
Are
of...
you a clergyman?
I would sort of feel obliged to kind of be nice to them. And
Oh, well,
sort
you
of
would, wouldn't you?
establish some rapport.
I
of
do
some kind.
understand your point.
Exactly. Yes. I think your case is good in parts.
So, there was a famous figure in history, one of the most famous in history, who did certainly not have Stockholm Syndrome, who was kidnapped by pirates, and...
Johnny Depp.
No, this is a great figure in history. He was kidnapped by pirates, was held hostage and the ransom was paid.
What sort of era?
He then pursued them with a small fleet, or a number of boats, a flotilla.
Francis Drake.
Drake.
No, and
Cook.
Raleigh.
Nelson.
had them all crucified.
Oh.
A
Oh,
Roman.
it's Julius Caesar.
Julius Caesar is the right
Caesar.
answer. Yeah. And the thing is, he'd told them while he was held hostage, when I get out, I will come back and I will crucify you. And they apparently thought it was a joke.
Who's laughing?
They didn't know their Caesar. So,
How
tough
do you
cookie.
crucify someone if they've got hooks for hands.
They have magnets, massive magnets.
They've got one wooden leg there, haven't they? So that's not so difficult.
Oh, wait, why was Julius Caesar kidnapped by pirates? Under what
Yeah, it was a
circumstances?
ransom, simply. It was a business.
But they didn't kill him. It sounds like he was harmed.
Yeah, he went after them and had them crucified. He was not a man to be trifled with, Julie.
Especially if you called him Julie, I
Yeah,
imagine.
no, he didn't like that.
Worst thing you could do to Julius Caesar, call him Julie.
There is a suggestion of Stockholm Syndrome. Could be a sort of psychological thing in the same way that women throughout history have had to put up with being taken and seized, and that the human being is conditioned to make the best of a bad job.
Well, we've all been there.
That's just a relationship thing.
But it's sort of logical. I mean, if you thought you were being kidnapped long term, it makes sense to try and see it from the other person's point of view.
Absolutely right.
Just
It
to
does.
maintain sanity.
Yeah,
not
and in fact, to get the syndrome to work on them rather than you, for them to be so fond of you, they would no longer want to kill you, which would be handy. Now, what's a good reason for faking your own kidnapping?
You're bored on holiday?
that would do
You're
it.
trying to get out of a relationship, that's why I would always do it.
There was an American man who pretended to be kidnapped just so that he had an excuse as to why he hadn't called his girlfriend for 2 weeks. He was terrified of her reaction. And the police realised it because he had duct tape around his wrists, but the spool of it was still connected. Oh, terrible. Your teeth
Could
are
imagine
so
the girlfriend
fibrous.
saying you could still have texted.
Exactly. You could have done. There was Jennifer Wilbanks of Duluth, who faked a kidnapping to get out of attending her own wedding. But the weirdest is the 2008 case was another Spaniard, Josefa Sanchez Vargas, who convinced her husband to pay more than £500,000 to secure the release of their children. It's a faked kidnapping, which you say, well, that's, you expect that. Except she did that 6 times over 5 years. She didn't twig.
What a nest egg.
Every time she needed a new hat. Some people get kidnapped just for the thrill of it. Can you imagine why that would
So they pay for kidnappers to kidnap
Yeah.
them so they can experience the visceral thrill of, being in a car boot with a load of duct tape around your ankle.
Absolutely. That.
People are weird.
BBC does it too. If you're going into a hostile zone, you have hostile zone training where you're driving a Land Rover and chaps come out with ski masks and put bags over your head and bundle you into the back of a... Or was that...
Oh, this is for BBC reporters. I was just thinking, why sort of presenting good pizza? Sort of hostile zone is in people who aren't very nice to you.
It's like a Top Gear sex park. I mean, it's like... Clarkson gets his kicks of a weekend.
One of those funny phrases, isn't it? When you put in the back of a van, you're always bundled.
Bundle, it's the only word.
Bundle into it. It's true. You get bundled onto a bus.
Anyway, yes, there's a French company that for €900 gives you your basic kidnapping, which is being shoved into a car boot and held up, blindfolded and things like that. And then for a little extra money, you can have helicopter chases and really quite sort of sexy stuff.
And then they'll cut your ear off and send it to your mum.
Yes. So, now it's time for me to hold you all hostage. There's no escape from general ignorance. Fingers on the buzzers, please. How long should you wait before reporting a missing person to the police? Yes, sir.
Well, certainly until they're missing.
Very
out
good.
of sight.
Yeah. When they've left the
turned the
room.
corner.
Yeah. When is it too soon? Just going to make a cup of tea. Right, I'm ready. 24 hours?
I don't think you should wait at all if you're convinced someone's
Absolutely right.
missing.
If you take your child into a supermarket, it'd be 20 minutes, wouldn't it? I mean, you
20
know that they're
seconds.
gone. 20
Yeah.
seconds, really. You just check they're not there.
I'm going to wait 24 hours. Go home tomorrow. Well, I don't know where she is. I'm going to wait till tomorrow. You might as well go out. 'Cause we don't have to get Let's have a curry and some wine and phone her in the morning.
You're absolutely right. And of course, if it's an adult, it doesn't matter because the police are very likely just to say that's not our business, unless they have a particular problem. But the fact is, yeah, there is no set time. The police use their own skill and judgment, as it were. If it's a child, it's obviously...
That's a rare
There's 3 words you don't hear in the same sentence.
Just hope you got burgled soon.
I got burgled so many times in the 90s. That one time they came round, about the 5th time I'd been burgled, they came round and my cat came in, and this constable goes, if only you could talk.
Fantastic. Oh,
Is that how we're going to... Is that it then? Is that the extent of the investigation? Willing the animal to...
Now, what did Parliament pay for to put in Sir Peter Viggers' garden? Yes.
The notorious Duck House.
Oh! You're in the duck house there. And the fact is, the duck house was one of the ones that they turned down. Oh. Yeah, he put in claims for £32,000 for gardening, £500 for 28 tonnes of manure, £1,645 for the Duck Island, but that was turned down by the eagle-eyed guardians of the national purse.
Yeah.
Probably worth mentioning that at the same time as that £8 billion was spent to bailing out the banks. It was just that was too big a sum for anyone to get their heads around, so they went, what? £10 for a sandwich?
I
This
know.
is appalling.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Sir Peter Viggers later commented that the Duck House was never liked by the ducks and is now in storage. Oh, look, there they are. They don't need an island. I love ducks, don't you?
You never see that sort of thing on a coat of arms, do you? All the sort of lions and dragons. You see something nice, like
duck.
a duck or,
Yeah.
you know, Eggs Benedict or some sort of friendly... friendly
Yeah,
thing.
sort of a hamster or a guinea pig or something.
Yeah.
It's true, a furry
Yes.
pairing. Anyway, the famous Duck House didn't cost the taxpayer a penny. And with that last tilt at our old friend General Ignorance, we reach the end of tonight's performance. And I can tell you that it is incredibly exciting. We have leaders, 2 leaders, with +3, Richard and Victoria. Rosa. In 3rd place, with -7, Alan Davis. Highly commendable. Highly commendable. And with a fantastic -24 is Sue Perkins. And it only remains for me to thank my families, Victoria, Sue, Richard and Alan. Thank you and good night.